Guys, it just seems like the Red Sox are a mess. I mean, you hear what Mookie Betts had to say. If the Red Sox had offered him what the Dodgers did, he would have stayed here in Boston, the Rafael Devers situation. But, Andy, I'll just start with you. This is a venting session. It's a safe space. Do the Red Sox even know what they're doing right now?
It certainly doesn't feel like it. They feel like a team that, and maybe a general manager, a leader of baseball operations who is learning on the job what his role is and learning what his lot in life is. And my view on Chaim Bloom was always he made his name in Tampa with an organization that could maximize its payroll. You bring him to Boston to maximize your payroll. I don't want you to act like you're in Tampa in terms of cutting costs. I just want you to get more bang for my John Henry buck. And I don't know that we are seeing that unfold before our eyes, but I do want to say, Chris Sale said this on our morning show on WEEI, asked a question about the MO of Chaim Bloom. I don't even think Chaim Bloom maybe knows his MO as a GM. He's learning on the job, going through some tough decisions, big contracts, organizational changing decisions. So the phrase I'm using for myself, viewing this from afar, not as close as Jason is I'm staying naively optimistic. That's naively optimistic.
Jason, do the Red Sox know what they're doing right now? How is this unfolding?
I think it all goes back to the Mookie Betts trade, which obviously wasn't all Chaim Bloom's fault. I think there's a lot of involvement in ownership. Do we give this guy that kind of money? But when you look at the final offer, $300 million over 10 years probably, versus $360 over 12. That's the difference between the Red Sox being maybe a World Series team last year and 2 wins away from being maybe closer to the Yankees and in more comfortable position to go for it this year than where they are right now. So you start right there by giving up Mookie Betts. And by the way, that trade has not looked very good. Alex Verdugo has not done a whole lot. Jeter Downs and Connor Wong maybe will be okay players. We'll see. But I think that's when you start to say, well, where is this team going? If it's not 2020, then is it 2021? Is it 2022? When are they going to invest? When are they going to go all in? I think Chaim so far has played it very safe. He's not been all in. He's not been all out. He's kind of just halfway in. And we see a lot of $10 million investments in James Paxton and Garrett Richards and $4 million here, $5 million there. He hasn't given a huge contract other than Trevor Story. And now you're wondering, are they going to sign any of their own guys? What year are they playing for?
Andy, how much more infuriating does hearing what Mookie Betts had to say kind of make this situation? Hearing that if the Red Sox had offered him the same deal, that he wanted to stay here in Boston.
On the surface, it's definitely maddening, but I also think there's some layers to that he conveniently kind of leaves out. And to steal the line from Ron Burgundy, I don't believe him because I think the money changed with the pandemic, the uncertainty of labor. I don't think Mookie Betts had the contract he actually got on his mind when he was negotiating with the Red Sox. I think he had more grand ideas of maybe what he was going to sign for. And then the way everything changed in baseball, in the world over the last couple of years, when he got to that point, it was like, yes, I'll take this contract. This is more than good enough for me, my family, everything moving forward. So I don't know if I really believe this revisionist history, if they had just met that number, that number was that number at the time, if that makes any sense.
Go ahead, Jason.
But what have the Red Sox done to give you faith that they're being honest about any of this? I mean, they've lowballed every one of their homegrown players that they've had and then gone out and replaced them with bigger contract free agents who have not succeeded in Boston for the most part. Hanley Ramirez, Pablo Sandoval, David Price, now Trevor Story. They're choosing to pay these guys instead. And when we hear what they actually have offered, or what the reports are that they've offered their guys, Xander Bogaerts, 1 year, $30 million contract extension. That's a joke. Mookie Betts, you couldn't get $65 million higher. You had to save that money, or the Boston Red Sox. You just lost one of your best players in franchise history over this. I don't think they've gained the trust for us to say, you know what? They're probably right, or I'm gonna believe Mookie Betts every single time on this because I just don't think the Red Sox have shown in good faith that they're willing to negotiate with their best players, especially their homegrown players.
Jason, we talked a little bit about Chaim Bloom, but how much blame, or maybe how would you evaluate the job that he's done so far with this organization, seeing where they are right now?
Well, you've got a $240 million payroll for luxury tax purposes. You're not even in the playoff picture at the All-Star break, and now you're looking at, do we trade our best players? Is this where we are? We didn't do anything in 2020. Last year, they love to talk about how they were 2 wins away, but I don't think they were actually in the Houston Astros class last year. They were probably a Mookie Betts away from being there. So I'm wondering, what year did they have in mind that was going to be the year? Because if it wasn't this year, which I don't think it was. They waited until Trevor Story at the last minute to actually make a move this year, otherwise very incremental moves. What year was it that they were trying to compete? That's the one I don't understand. And so right now you look at, okay, they spent $10 million on James Paxton, who hasn't helped them out at all this year. And now you might be selling before you even see James Paxton. You spent $5 million on Rich Hill, $4 million on Jake Diekman, on Matt Strahm. You're spending a little money here all over the place, and it's not really panning out. By the way, you signed Matt Barnes to a huge contract extension. He's been MIA for the better part of the last year. So there's been a lot of money going in the wrong places, and I'm just not sure what year the Red Sox are supposed to be competing in.
Andy, what role is Chaim Bloom playing in this?
Not a good one, I would say, because Jason touched on it. The Mookie Betts trade might look different if Chaim Bloom had maximized the return. If you had gotten somebody that got fans excited. Okay, we have to move on for a variety of reasons. He doesn't want to be here, tax purposes, all of that. But you brought in another developmental star, another pipeline prospect, as I like to call him in football, that is going to come up through the organization. We've seen Belichick, for example, do this over the years. You freak out because he let Ty Law go, but then Asante Samuel comes. You freak out because he let somebody, now they develop Malcolm Butler. If you develop stars in that same position, it softens the blow to the fans, but he hasn't done that. And now we're just hearing these ridiculous contract offers. And I'm sorry, the Matt Olson contract comp for Devers is one of the more ridiculous things I've ever heard. And not even as much for the comparison of the two players in the year 2022, but more because of you're addressing a middle of the lineup superstar bat with a contract that you signed Manny Ramirez to 20 plus years ago. Have you heard of inflation? You're being unrealistic within any financial world, outside of baseball, inside of baseball. Is there a bigger slap in the face to hand somebody a contract that's 22 years old?